Senate passes petroleum industry bill, that is a PIB. Nigeria attracts $2.5 billion investment from Afrexim Bank. Federal government proposes 13.98 trillion naira spending plan in 2022 as OPEC Plus hints at carbon supply cuts. This is Business Express on the network service of the NTA. I am Benny Adams, your guide. Good to have you join us on this business hour, and we start by telling you that President Muhammadu Buhari is passionate about ensuring that the micro, small and medium enterprises get the best necessary support from both the federal and state governments. Vice President Yemi Osinbajo stated this at the 28th edition of the National Micro, Small and Medium Enterprises Clinic in Dutse, Jigawa State. Jide Onifade reports that the Vice President also distributes agricultural machineries and equipment provided by the state to 922 beneficiaries.
Vice President Yemi Osinbajo, accompanied by Governor Abubakar Badaro, his Deputy Umar Namadi, and Minister of State for Industry, Trade and Investment, Mariam Katagum, toured the exhibition ground where various local products are on display. Vice President Osinbajo had one-on-one interaction with the participants and acknowledges their efforts, promising that the federal government will continue to give support and provide an enabling environment for their businesses to thrive. The Vice President also commends the state governor for collaborating with the federal government in the implementation of the various federal programs in the state for the benefit of the people.
I want to further assure participants that every effort will be made to address the challenges and bottlenecks that they may be facing. I must also encourage you to bring any of the issues, especially the issues to do with approvals and all of that, to the attention of the MSME Clinic Secretariat between today and tomorrow to get assistance and quick responses from some of the relevant agencies.
His Excellency the President also recently tasked our Vice President, who is leading the steering committee of the National Poverty Reduction and Growth Strategy. Tax was lifting 100 million out of poverty in 10 years.
For every state and local government in the country needs to identify specific areas of comparative advantage, particularly in agriculture and other resource endowments, and strive to optimize competencies.
Still in Jigawa State, the Vice President also joined the state governor in the distribution of agricultural machineries and equipment.
Also, the federal government has welcomed the proposal by Pan-African financial institution, Afrexim Bank, to invest $2.5 billion in the Nigerian economy with focus on oil and gas, health, and manufacturing sectors. Secretary to the government of the Federation, Boss Mustafa, while receiving Afrexim Bank's management in Abuja, says the investment will further reposition Nigeria as an economic hub in Africa.
Financial institutions that have the capacity and the knowledge to help us sustain the modest gains that have been made.
Meanwhile, Afreximbank has been recognized by Global Trade Review as leader in trade for pandemic support and ranked by Global Finance magazine in its annual World's Best Investment Banks list 2021 as the best bank offering crisis finance solutions in Africa in the fight against COVID-19 pandemic. These recognitions were as a result of Afreximbank's swift action at the beginning of the pandemic when the bank launched its Pandemic Trade Impact Mitigation Facility in March 2020 and the $1.5 billion collaborative COVID-19 pandemic response facility in November 2020. Moving on, President Muhammadu Buhari has approved and directed immediate disbursement of fertilizer subsidy fund to smallholder vulnerable farmers in the country. A statement by Senior Special Assistant on Agriculture, Andrew Kwasari, says the benefiting farmers have been enumerated in the database of Federal Ministry of Agriculture and Rural Development. The statement further indicates that the disbursement will be in batches. A total of 6,150 naira will be disbursed to 1,209,143 farmers in the first batch. President Buhari therefore called on the State Agricultural Development Project to enumerate more smallholder vulnerable farmers to support food security initiative of the federal government. Senate has passed the Petroleum Industry Bill, which it says, when signed into law, will reflect the yearnings of stakeholders in the oil and gas sector and make the market more competitive in Nigeria. At the House of Representatives, the report on the PIB bill was considered and approved. National Assembly correspondent Lami Ali reports.
Of the report began with a closed-door session involving the Minister of State for Petroleum Resources and the Group Managing Director of the Nigerian National Petroleum Corporation. 2 hours after the executive session, senators began clause-by-clause consideration of the bill presented by the Senate Joint Committee on Petroleum Downstream, Upstream and Gas.
Bill 1 passed into law will strengthen the accountability, transparency of the NNPC Limited as a full-fledged Karma company under statutory regulations, oversight with better returns to its shareholders, the Nigerian people.
This gas flaring is making people sick. It is damaging the environment. The remediation we seek is not construction of pipelines.
They are optimistic that the bill, which is made up of 5 chapters which include governance and institutions, administration, host communities development, fiscal framework and miscellaneous provisions, will bring about the long-awaited change in the oil and gas sector. But a point of order from Senator Ahmed Bakaita resulted in the reduction of the 5% for Host Communities Development Fund to 3%.
The amendment is just instead of 5% to read 3%.
This elicited a call for division from Senator George Sekibo, which was eventually withdrawn.
That you increase the number a little bit and put the question again.
The bill also made provision for 30% of funding for exploration of frontier basins across the country and making the Nigerian National Petroleum Corporation a commercial and limited liability company.
Those in favor that this bill be now read the 3rd time, say aye. Those against, say nay. The ayes have it. At least the demons have been defeated in this chamber. We have passed the bill by the grace of God. And let me also say that this is one of the products of the executive and the legislature working together.
Joining me to look at the PIB is Dr. Billy Gillis-Harry, the National President, Petroleum Products Retail Outlet Owners Association of Nigeria. You're welcome to Business Express.
Thank you so much, sir.
Doctor, it's been a long journey, decades, 10 years, 15 years, 18 years. Finally, we are here, the PIB. What are the key points for you in this PIB?
Well, 13 years is a long time coming, but we are very happy that it has finally come to happen. I personally want to express my joy as the leader of all the retail outlets in this country that this bill will be the game changer. It will be the game changer that will certainly make way for investor confidence to be restored in Nigeria. The governance
rules, fiscal, administrative values will be clearly spelled out, because the bill clearly makes us to understand that there will be two effective regulatory bodies, the commission, which will be in charge of upstream, and the agency, the authority, which will be in charge of midstream and downstream. Now, every other thing that needs to be tinkered with, after this has been passed, and hopefully the president give a sense to it as fast as it gets to his table, this country, I believe, will know better. Thanks to Mr. President, to the Minister of Petroleum, the Minister of State, and also Mr. Melekiari, the Senate President, the Chairman of Upstream, Senator Bassi Albert, and all of their teams. Every one of them have made Nigeria proud.
Okay, talking about tinkering, I want to know, what are your thoughts on the equity shareholding? Because already the Senate passed 3%, while we have a 5% proposal by the House.
Well, that will be still, I believe, subject to some kind of discussion, because 5% was actually approved even by the House of Reps.
Okay.
And for whatever reason, the Senate, in their wisdom, reduced it to 3% for host communities. Well, this is actually supposed to make sure that the host community supports, works very productively to encourage investors to be in that area. So, I mean, giving 5% would not have been anything too big, but we have started with 3%. So hopefully we'll get there and be able to even get beyond that. Because if the hosts communities are very supportive, then we can meet our 40 billion reserve, projection, and 4 billion per day projection, barrels production projection. So it's very critical that that should be done.
Okay, looking at figures, according to the Nigerian Extractive Industries Transparency Initiative, that is NTA, disclosed that over $10.4 billion and about 378.7 billion naira were lost through under-remittances, inefficiencies, theft, or absence of a clear governance framework for the oil and gas industry. What do you make of this? And with this law, with this framework in place now, are we seeing the end of these losses?
Well, NTA have their information, and I'm sure they must have done some really thorough analysis to get to those decisions. For businessmen like us, we will be focused on how to make production work better, to make sure that we have enough activity in the economic sector to make the industry to be productive and beneficial. We will worry ourselves with the technicalities of what is actually going to happen with the bill being assented to. Once the bill is being assented to, we can be sure that investor confidence in this country will rise. And of course, because of the governance structure that is already coming on board with this PIB that has gone through the House of Reps and the Senate, there is already provision for very disciplined fiscal management. So I believe that we should get to the point where we should not be talking about such colossal sums of money being frittered away, for whatever reason. And this is why those of us who are in the private sector that are really, really involved in the day-to-day business, for instance, like our sector, Petroleum Product Retail Outlet Owners Association, our focus will be on how to make all the upstream investment to become useful. Because we are the most critical. The retail outlets are the most critical last mile in the value chain, from upstream to midstream to the downstream.
Yeah.
So our interest will be, let's the PIB bill that is passed by both the House and the Senate be assented to. And let us start the process of working out the privatization process of NNPC, ensuring that all the necessary rules.
Do you see that taking time? Yes, it is hoped that the moment this bill gets to the presidency is going to be accepted to as fast as possible. But the process of privatization down to the impact is expected to create for Nigerians. How long do you think it's going to take? Is this something that's going to happen?
Well, there are timelines already in the bill.
Okay.
There are timelines. There is a 6-month timeline, there's a 12-month timeline, there's different timelines that are given. And all we need to do is to encourage the authorities to ensure that these rules, these processes are, effectively, policed and made to become practically possible. That's what is required. The time when we pass bills and then pay lip service to it, I think should be over. The authorities should really look at what does the bill say, how do we make it work, and that's where they need associations, organizations like us, because we will certainly want the best practice to be in the field, and that will help us to grow our economy.
Okay, looking at the oil-producing communities, it's been one of the issues that has delayed the passage of this bill.
Yes.
The percentage, 5%, 3%, whichever one. Now that it's been passed, what would this mean for these communities?
Well, I do not see the host communities as just going to sleep and clapping their hands and shouting hallelujah. But I see a situation where reasonableness will, come into focus. Because at the end of the day, 1% of something is better than 100% of nothing. So I will personally, in my capacity, I'm also a Niger Deltan, and the impact of whatever the host communities are asking for will impact on me positively, and also negatively if the mechanics that is supposed to be put in place is not. But I will certainly appeal to our, Niger Delta communities and everywhere. Of course, very soon oil is going to be found in different parts of Nigeria. You can see that 30% of the profits for NMPC is already earmarked for frontier basin exploration services. Yeah. We hope that they will be very well utilized, and it will not be money that's just going through the drain, because we need that kind of cash, that kind of money to be pumped into the bloodstream of the economy of this country. And so, the law is already coming to be passed. I believe that the president will give us, because it's one of the high points of the presidency. It's one of the greatest, it's 13 years, one bill. It didn't work through. So this president makes it work is something that we should all be happy with. These ministers made it work. This GMD made it work. This Senate president made it work.
Wow.
I personally think that is something that
you also contributed.
Yeah, we all contributed.
Thank you so very much, Dr. Billy Gillis Harry, National President, Petroleum Products Retail Outlet Owners Association of Nigeria. Thank you for sharing your thoughts with us at this particular point.
Thank you.
I hope the PIB is actually a blessing.
It's going to be a blessing.
Thank you very much.
We don't need to leave it only for the authorities. We Nigerians should also do the best we can.
Thank you so very much.
Thank you.
Well, moving on, Minister of Finance, Budget and National Planning, Zainab Ahmed, say government is excited about the passage of the petroleum industry bill by the Senate and insists subsidy on petrol must go to give more fiscal room for meaningful development. She was speaking at the public consultation on the draft 2022 to 2024 medium-term expenditure framework and fiscal strategy paper. Leah Katung-Babatunde completes the story.
Consultation is the first in the series before the draft document is made into a working medium-term expenditure framework and fiscal strategy paper. 13.98 trillion naira is the planned expenditure for 2022. Upscaling revenues is the biggest task before policymakers at the moment as a result of the coronavirus pandemic. 900 billion naira is being planned for payment of subsidies, but the Minister of Finance, Budget and National Planning, Zainab Ahmed, says resting the unsustainable subsidy regime is long overdue.
So we do need to get rid of subsidy completely. That is our view in the ministry. It's not a popular view by Labour, but that will be the most practical thing to do. Right now, we're subsidizing not only consumption in Nigeria, but consumption within the whole region. We have a price of about 165 naira, $10, but our neighbors are selling PMS at about $500. So the beneficiaries are actually the marketers that are taking this fuel from Nigeria across to our neighboring countries. They're the ones that are making the profit.
A look at the macroeconomic projections driving the plan show oil prices standing at $57 in 2022 and production at 1.88 million barrels per day. Inflation 13% in 2022. 10% in 2024, with GDP rising by 4.2% in 2022 and 2.3% in 2024.
And if the necessary reforms that we project, like the removals of some of these subsidies, we will have a lot of funds available to be able to grow our GDP higher than our population.
The draft 2022 to 2024 MTF and FSP has been prepared against the backdrop of global economic recovery amidst improved vaccination outlook and lower incidence of infection.
We now move to the commodities market, where OPEC boosted oil production last month by the most in a year, in line with plans to meet rising demand as countries recover from the pandemic. Meanwhile, the Organization of the Petroleum Exporting Countries and its allies appear set to increase their combined oil production by about 2 million barrels per day from August to December to meet recovering global oil demand. Ministers from OPEC and their allies, known as OPEC Plus, began online meetings on Thursday, and the alliance's joint committee recommended the group adds 400,000 barrels per day each month from August to December, responding to oil demand destruction caused by the COVID-19 crisis. OPEC Plus last year agreed to cut output by almost 10 million barrels per day from May 2020, with plans to phase out the caps by the end of April 2022. And the Federal Inland Revenue Service, FIRS, has granted a one-month extension for the filing of company income tax returns by taxpayers with December 31st, 2020 accounting year end, whose statutory tax returns were due not later than 30th June 2021. This extension was contained in a public notice of 30th June 2021 signed by the service's executive chairman, Mohammed Nami. According to NEMI, the extension suspends corresponding late returns penalty and interest for late filing for the period of the extension, provided that the filing process is concluded on the FIRS Tax Pro Max platform and the tax due is paid using the payment reference number on or before 31st July 2021. The extension also provides an opportunity to taxpayers to upload all unused WHT credit notes into the tax Promax not later than 31st July 2021. The FIRS is granting the 30-day extension as a result of glitches experienced on its recently deployed Tax Promax platform solution by some taxpayers while trying to complete their annual filing processes. And the Tax Promax solution was introduced last month by the Federal Inland Revenue Service, FIRS, to ease tax compliance as Nigeria continues to address revenue shortfall occasioned by the coronavirus pandemic, and results are already trickling in improving the country's tax administration system. The system enables taxpayers to generate an obligatory document identity number, DIN, before they can make remittance, and is already gaining traction in the country.
No doubt on the performance of the Tax Promax so far, because the company, as you had, Indorama, said that it was seamless. They started Saturday. By Monday morning, they filed over 14 billion naira on the platform. And there is nothing that could be so better than this.
Our Tax Promax is very robust, very user-friendly, and we have been able to file the income tax returns in time. We have been able to make the payments before 30th June. Hence, we find that is a user-friendly software.
Next is Global Markets with Bosede Ebo.
Come to the Global Market Review segment. Stocks traded in an anxious way this Friday as markets across the globe anticipate the all-important monthly jobs report from the U.S. Stock markets in Africa traded positive this Friday after bouncing back from the losses recorded at the beginning of the week. South Africa's JSE Africa Top 40, Nairobi's All-Share and Tunisia's Tunidex were positive. Namibia's overall index was negative, while Ghana's GSE Composite was marginally positive. Stocks in Asia were mixed, and mainland Chinese stocks were among the biggest losers regionally as the Shanghai Composite fell 1.95% to close 3,518.76. Hang Seng Index dipped 1.8% to close 28,310.42, while Nikkei topped 0.27% to close 28,783.28. European markets were modestly higher in early trade Friday as investors also await the closely watched U.S. jobs report. Britain's FTSE was up 0.08%, DAX 0.35% higher, and CAC 40 also topped 0.05%. Futures contracts tied to the major U.S. stock indices were flat on Friday as Wall Street awaits the key June jobs reports. Dow Jones Industrial Average, S&P 500, and Nasdaq Composite were positive. That's the Global Market Reports. I am Bosede Ebo.
That wraps Business Express for this particular edition. Business Express returns on Monday at 3 p.m. Stay safe.